This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Howell Wealth Management. On the Helping Healing Humor podcast, we talk about anxiety and stress and its impact on our everyday lives. We know that finances, including planning for retirement, is one of the leading causes of stress. It can be confusing and overwhelming. There are differing opinions on the best approach. It can be hard to know who to trust. For our retirement planning, Whitney and I trust Greg Howell of Howell Wealth Management at Northwestern Mutual. Greg is professional, knowledgeable, and accessible. He looks at the whole picture and thinks outside the box to create ways to help you reach your financial goals. Retirement planning can be especially challenging for ministers who do not have the benefit of a 401k, but Greg's expertise and creativity can get you on the right path and give you confidence for the future. Text him to schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at 931-638-1576. Be sure to tell him Ben and Travis sent you. Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We're coming to you from Mars Hill Bible School. We just wrapped up the Badify Freedom 5K, the third annual.
Third annual, man.
Third year in a row. This all started because we were in lockdown and thought, man, let's get some exercise. We also had the
Why not?
Ask Lonnie Jones Anything. Somebody asked about, working out. What do you get up a gym membership? And he was basically like, hey, if you're not going to do it in your living room, you're not going to get in your car and drive to a gym more than likely. So,
and to be honest, that's proven to be true for me on many occasions. So.
To be true.
Yeah.
So for those of you that do go to the gym, we know people out there who do. You're the real MVP.
Go for it.
For those of you like us, that it's best in your living room are probably not going to get done anyways, but it's a little easier there. Way to go. But we had an interesting event. We woke up this morning, rain falling from the sky, and we came out.
Lightning falling from the sky.
Thunderstorms, and then we got a window.
Yeah.
Right at 7:30 when we were supposed to start.
Very small window.
Very small window. So we got it started. We had 20 or so, and they all finished. It was great. It was a wonderful event. Raised some money for St. Jude. Have no idea how much just yet. But, man, we just can't be thankful enough for Transform, CYC, Heritage Christian University, Karen Mann. Those were all our title level sponsors, our red, white, and blue sponsors. And then, of course, we had Run to the Cross that donated the clock, and great donation to the cause. And, man, we just had a ton of people, and on the back of the t-shirt, maybe I need to have you turn around and look. Studio 23 gave us a bag, our bags for our goodie bags. They're amazing people. We got Chick-fil-A meal cards, all that fun, good stuff.
Yep, we had.
We couldn't do it without them. Mars Hill allowed us to run on their campus. Mars Hill Church of Christ allowed us to run on their campus. And I think we got everybody covered.
I think we did.
Yeah.
I did.
How about that? From memory, that never happens.
That's pretty amazing. So good job with
we
that.
wanted to jump on and say how thankful we are to those folks. Also, now, probably not something we want to think about, the page turns.
It does.
To the Staying Alive Disco Dodgeball Tournament on August 20th. It's going to be right back here on the campus of Mars Hill. And so looking for youth groups to sign up. I think a minimum of 6 competing at a time, a maximum of 10 on your roster. You can have more than one team. Got to have a female. You could have one adult on, but we're looking forward to that. Going to have a lot of fun. Rest up a little bit, I think, is the key.
Is it one adult on the team or one adult that
can be competing?
On the court at a time.
Can be competing at a time. So having said all that, I want to talk a little bit about teamwork.
Yeah.
And the importance of teamwork. And we are living proof of the benefit of teamwork. From Ben played high school baseball. I played high school football. I coached football, still do. Little guys, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Coached middle and high for a long time. And so events like this do not happen without tremendous teamwork, as the people that we mentioned just a minute ago made this happen.
And if you're planning to be in the Staying Alive Dodgeball Tournament, you want to think about this for your team.
Yes.
You're going to be putting a team together. We're giving you something
pointers of how to be a good teammate to make the dream work. The team work makes the dream work. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I will also mention, if you missed out on being a sponsor for the Badify Freedom 5K, you can totally be a sponsor for the Staying Alive Disco Dodgeball Tournament, several levels there. CYC and Transform did both, so they're going to be a sponsor for Dodgeball. Karen Mann did both, and she's also given us a great tagline of "There will be trauma." So, I mean, just genius stuff. As we turn the page to Dodgeball, we'll give you a few teamwork pointers that we've picked up, and they all fall in the great phrase of know your role. The great umbrella of teamwork is to know your role. And so knowing is half the battle. We're just going to keep throwing out
There's some G.I. Joe
phrases.
stuff.
I mean, that's from blowback, but you need to know. So if you're a leader, and we may not do a great job of this with our events, but you need to set expectations. You can set expectations for we'll talk a little bit about expectations setting for yourself towards the end. We get to roll, but as a leader or as a coach or even a leader of a section of the team, you have different levels, different plays and all that stuff. You need to set the expectation so that people can know their role.
That's
so, right. We go into something, Ben, this is what I expect of you for the podcast. You bring all the wonderful counseling expertise, and I just sit here and try not to mess things up. And then there's the editing and there's the posting. And, there's all these things wherever you work, where there's a team. And it's really hard to be successful at that if you don't know what you're expected to do.
Well, there's a verse in the Bible that, and it maybe I don't know right off the bat the immediate context. So if somebody's listening and goes, that's out of context, it might be, but it's been used in a lot of contexts, and I think it works here. It's found in Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so that's probably got a lot bigger or maybe a more specific swath that it applies to, but it's true for a team too. If you just got somebody, I don't know how to coach football. So if I got up there and tried to coach football, it would be a disaster. Travis knows how to coach football, knows what he needs. I don't even really know how to play football. I've played backyard football. I've played Madden football. I've
Hall of Famer right here.
Yeah, I've done well in those things, but I have not really ever played. So certain things that people would call out or talk about, I wouldn't know how to do it. So the knowledge of it is super important.
Bill Beck was here, and he was talking about one of his son's coaches that has a conversation every year to start the season, and it goes something like, I've been flipping, light switches on and off all my life, but that doesn't make me an electrician. And just because you've watched football all your life does not make you a coach. And I thought that was some tremendous insight.
Pretty good, yeah.
When you come to this, there is a coach, there is a leader, and there are people who do the things that make that work. And so as a leader, you got to set the expectation. And then the second one is so there's knowing the expectation, what's expected of me. And then there's knowing your capabilities, what you're good at, what you kind of bring to the table. But then there's also the kind of stretching yourself and being open, which I think is the kind of the last point. But talk a little bit about knowing what you're comfortable with and knowing to push that as well and when.
Well, there's a couple of things, and this might go back a little bit on the last point, but just to hit on it, I thought about it and then I forgot about it. But the idea of, expectation versus reality. If I set an expectation bar so high that it's unattainable, what makes up between the reality and that expectation is disappointment and frustration. So, there has to be, you always want to set your bar high. What is the statement that, you always talk about? I'm going to strive for perfection.
I'm going to chase perfection and land at excellence.
So, there's something to be said for setting a bar high, and you might not quite get to that bar. But if you've got something that's so high that you are just not capable of getting to it, anywhere close to it, what's in between there is going to be frustration and disappointment.
Well, think about running. If you haven't trained, you haven't done anything, you probably want to focus on finishing. I'm just going to finish. It's not wrong to set at a mile pace. This is what I want to get. But if you've been training, you've been running all the way up to the Freedom 5K, then maybe you can set the bar a little higher. But going into it, not having trained, you probably want to set the expectations
I'm going to
something that's accomplishable.
Yeah, if you're in the dodgeball tournament and you're thinking, okay, we're going to have a 15-year-old throwing 100 miles an hour, throwing that ball 100 miles an hour at somebody, you're probably setting your expectations a little too high. A little high. But it's okay. We could, you can cheat, you can work towards some things, but you're probably not gonna get there. So that's one thing, and that's both personal and from the team goal. But when it comes to our own, I think there's some things we talked about. You mentioned during the 5K, I think you said that we were going to persevere. Let's persevere through this. It's raining. There's been a storm roll through. There might be another storm roll through.
Your attitude.
Got it in there. Yeah. Just that attitude is so important. What you bring to the table, it's not always about the ability. Travis, played football in high school, probably the smallest kid on the team.
Played quotation.
Stayed on the sideline quite a bit, as I did in baseball. Was never, a superstar. But I think we both had the attitude on our teams is we're going to do what the team requires for us to do.
Team first.
Yeah, and we're just going to put everything we've got into it. There's the passage in Romans 12 that says, as much as lies within you, live at peace with all people. There's places that talk about, throughout the New Testament, just encouraging us to use those gifts that we've been given, to put everything into what we have into the work. And that doesn't mean my everything's not going to look like Travis's everything.
I think that leads right into role.
Yeah.
As mentioned, I've coached football, and we would have teams that may not have the talent. Sometimes you've got those guys at the top, talent-wise, that are just more talented, and it's kind of centrally on that person. And then you've got those teams where maybe there's not that one person that's super talented, but everybody brings and knows their role. And a lot of the teams that were not successful were the ones that had the really talented 2 or 3, and they tried to do everything for everyone. And they couldn't bring themselves to trust that the other guy was at least going to get his job done. Maybe he's not going to excel. Maybe he's not going to be the superstar, but he's going to make the block. He's going to do something. He's going to fulfill his role. That's the one thing he can do. And so those superstars oftentimes were trying to be everything to everyone in every situation. And a lot of times they were out of position to make a play. They weren't able to do it. Still looked great. They looked great doing it, but it really left a hole where they were supposed to be. And so there was this trust thing. And so that was what I would talk about as far as knowing your role, being coachable, trusting, even, when, putting a belief that they're going to do it better this time. And they may not have gotten it right that time, but there's going to be another time. And so there's several attitude things there where maybe today was not what I had hoped it would be, but his mercies are new every morning, or whatever that looks like from a sports standpoint, from a life standpoint. But knowing your role, showing up, being coachable, being directable, being open to other possibilities and other roles that might present themselves.
Yeah, take it back to Scripture. You've got Ephesians 4 that talks about what every joint supplies. Every piece has to be working, and Romans chapter 12 says that too. It talks about at the very beginning just our roles and what we're supposed to be doing within the church. And you look at an organization, you look at a team, you look at anything that you're doing. Everybody's got to have their role and understand what that role is, and be able to sometimes even accept a role that you didn't really want. That somebody says, Travis, I need you to do this role. You may have trained for something else. You may have done something else, but at that moment, they need you for something else. Are you that kind of team player that goes, I'm going to do what you need?
It increases your value. You want to make yourself as valuable as possible, and being willing to do things that maybe aren't. Now, there needs to be a time where you can say no, no, I can't do that right now. But also, I'm available, I will do it this one time. Or maybe it's something that you get into and you realize, hey, this is kind of my jam. This is something I'm good at. But being able to do that and adding value to you want to be as unexpendable, is that a phrase, as you can be. At Riverside, if I disappeared tomorrow, they'd probably be okay without me. But you kind of want it to be like, man, look at how much Travis does. If he just, this would be not good. And so the more value you can add, the better, but also that trusting. I oftentimes think about Jesus and all the knowledge he had of everything. And yet he focused
and
on...
didn't trust his disciples.
And didn't trust his disciples. And he focused on what he was here for. And that shows up in The Chosen. I don't know if y'all have seen the episode about where the water bubbles up, and they kind of have that conversation of, they realize that Jesus probably knows why it bubbles up, but he's like, someone else will figure that out one day. Like, that's not what's important right now.
Yeah.
My role is very different. And so I think about that sometimes, and maybe that's something that keeps me up at night thinking about it. But
you've coached enough football. What are the most, I guess, wanting to be attained roles on a football team? Like, what are the ones that everybody wants to do?
Well, everybody wants to carry the ball.
Right.
Everybody wants to carry the ball. And I made an effort to try and make that happen for our offensive linemen who played all 4 years. We'd really try to figure out some way to get the ball in their hands. But then a lot of those guys figure out that I really don't want the ball in my hands. The little kids that I coach, everybody gets to play every position. It's hilarious how many of them by mid-season are like, Coach, I'm okay not playing quarterback today. But it's great because they get the opportunity. They get to try it. But, everybody kind of wants that glory moment until they realize what all goes into that, the pressure that comes with it.
And what's the least glorified position on the field?
On the field? Are we talking sidelines?
We're talking about from fan standpoint.
From a fan standpoint, you don't hear an offensive lineman's name unless something bad has happened.
Yeah.
It's not happening. If you hear outside of starting lineups, you hear the center, the guard, the tackles names, something has gone wrong. Yeah, something is not good. It's usually a penalty or something.
So from that standpoint, you think about what's the most important roles, and every role is important, but you've got this role that nobody ever hears their name, but they're the guys who are...
If you ain't got those, it don't matter how good the quarterback is.
What are you doing?
He's picking himself.
How many times do we complain about quarterbacks, and then we, people who know go, no, that's the offensive line.
Well, Alabama this year. If Alabama, and they've got talented linemen, I'm not bashing any of them, but if they would have had just a little more from that group, there's probably another trophy in Tuscaloosa. And Georgia's a great team, not taking anything away from them, but that was a major issue. You had a Heisman Trophy, winning quarterback.
Yeah.
But the offensive line, if there's nobody up there to keep his jersey clean, but you're exactly right. There's a level of humility that goes into knowing your role.
And my role may not be glory. My role may be, I was listening to a podcast the other day about the Roman Empire and that what they claimed, and there's a lot of things that went into the downfall of the Roman Empire itself. And one of them they said was this idea of glory, that everybody wants glory, and that all the leadership, there was a desire. The only way you could attain the gloria of the Roman Empire was by conquering. Mm-hmm. And so there was no need for them to go to war. There was no need for them to go to war, but they were trying to go to war anyway, a lot of times, and ended up losing the empire for, more of a dictatorship.
Well, there was a story, I don't know if you were in that class with me, with Dr. Massey, but it was one of the first generals of Rome, and he had returned home, and I think it was a turnip. He grew turnips, and he picked one up, and he said, when the purpose of Rome moves away from providing the basic needs of life, then the empire will be in trouble. Yep. And sure enough, that came to fruition. But two things to mention glory. A lot of times in the Bible, when it mentions glory, to get the glory, it's not fun. There's suffering. In fact, I think when Jesus mentions glory of the Father, he's really talking about crucifixion. I'm going to die. I'm going to sacrifice. And so those are two aspects.
Which is interesting because kind of the opposite of what the Romans would have thought.
It's exactly the opposite.
We're gonna get glory by conquering others. Jesus was going to get glory by suffering.
That's a scandalous message. People show up, the Messiah, crucified Messiah, makes zero sense to them in the first century. To us, it obviously means everything, but to them, it wouldn't have been crazy.
So if you want to be a good teammate, just know your role.
Know your role. So the Gregory Howell and Northwestern Mutual question of the day is Batify Freedom 5K 2022. Give me some of your favorite moments, Ben.
I think one of my favorite moments was some of you may know this and realize this. Nick Berryman last year, right before the 5K, a little bit before it, I can't remember exact date. He had a stroke, and he was actually either in the hospital or in rehab when it happened last year. His wife and daughter came and ran
both.
Anyway.
They've hit all three every year.
And so they were here for it. And they came back this year and brought him with them. And he rode a scooter till it got to some hills that it didn't like, and it died on him. And but he was able to do most of it, and they did all of it, pushing a stroller. And it was an amazing thing just to see them show up. It's about showing up. You know, they showed up to support. They showed up to help themselves in some level, but I think more to support St. Jude.
Well,
and we're just
encouragement, 100%. They hit that. They're the superstar of encouragement. I think mine is all of the rain songs, which some of those were on purpose, but then the race finished with "Bless the Rains" down in Africa. So shout out to Will Mahan fulfilling the Africa part of that song, and we're thankful for the rain because we hadn't had rain. So I'm not complaining. The farmers are probably all rejoicing. We're rejoicing with them because without them, we don't eat.
And it was cool. The runners were not burning up hot when they crossed the finish line. Some of them were, you could tell, had put a lot of strain in. Had some super fast guys.
Yeah, and we totally did not play TNT Thunderstruck. We cut it off because
we started to, but
don't want to tempt the fates. Not that we believe in that stuff. But anyways, Ben, it's been a great Battle 5 Freedom 5K.
Absolutely.
3rd annual. Looking forward to the 4th, but let's do a little dodgeball in a month.
Let's do it. Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.